What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Draft Hub. And today we are going to be using Pro Football Network's playoff simulator to simulate the entire 2025-2026 NFL season. Now, I don't know if they've ever had this tool before, but this is the first time I'm ever using it. I usually use Playoff Predictor for this video. This will be the third year that I am doing this video between my old channel and this new one here. But interestingly enough, the Los Angeles Rams have won the simulation both times that I've done it. So I guess in simulation land, they are going for a three-peat for the Super Bowl. You know, I don't know, maybe the people that are behind the software of these simulation websites, maybe they really like the LA Rams, but for some reason, they always wind up sneaking into the playoffs at like 10-7 or 9-8 and just winning the whole thing. So it'll be interesting to see how this works this time around. So I don't have any influence on these games. If you guys have used Pro Football Network or Playoff Predictor, you can go through the entire schedule and pick the winner of every game. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to let it simulate the entire season. So we're going to be doing check-ins every quarter season. So there's 17 games. So we'll do after week 4, we'll do after around like week 8 or 9, then week 12 or 13, and then at the end of the season we will take a look at it. So we'll go over standings and everything. So I ran this simulation a couple times before this actually that I'm recording this, and it actually seemed pretty legit. It didn't seem like anything crazy like the New York Jets winning the Super Bowl or the Titans finishing in first place. Nothing crazy like that, like pretty straightforward. So we'll see what we get out of this simulation. I just got to say before we do this quarter season check-in, this is a really impressive simulator from Pro Football Network. I've always been a relative fan of their mock draft simulator, but this schedule predictor and simulation is really, really good. It's really clean. There's not too many ads either. I really, really enjoyed this. I think I'm going to be using this from here on out. So anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there. So you see the playoff participants up top, you see the seeding, how it'll all work out, and then we have the standings underneath here. So we'll go through the standings real quick before we see any quarter season playoff matchups. So in the AFC East, you have the Buffalo Bills at 3-1, the Jets at 2-2, the Miami Dolphins at 2-2, and the New England Patriots at 2-2. That seems pretty legit. Maybe the only one that's not as believable here through 4 weeks might be the Jets, and I say that because the New York Jets are my favorite football team, and I just expect so little of them at this point. But moving over to the AFC North, that also seems like a standard issue. You have the Baltimore Ravens at 3-1, the Bengals at 3-1, the Steelers at 1-3, who still haven't figured out their quarterback situation at the time of recording, and then the Cleveland Browns at 0-4, who have way too many quarterbacks. AFC South is a little interesting so far. You have the Jags leading the way at 2-2, and the Colts, the Texans, and the Tennessee Titans all at 1-3. And then the AFC West, which I think is going to be the most exciting division in football this upcoming season. You have the LA Chargers leading the way at 3-1, the Kansas City Chiefs at 2-2, the Broncos at 2-2, and the Raiders at 1-3. Moving over to the NFC side, the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0. Washington is 2-2. The Dallas Cowboys are 1-3, and the New York Giants are 0-4. In the tightly contested NFC North, you have the Green Bay Packers at 4-0, the Minnesota Vikings with J.J. McCarthy at 3-1, the Lions at 3-1, and the Chicago Bears, who unfortunately have the second hardest schedule in all of football, at 1-3. The South is relatively entertaining as well: 3-1, 2-2, 1-3, 1-3 between the leading of the pack Falcons. You have the Buccaneers at 2-2, the the Panthers at 1-3, and the New Orleans Saints at 1-3. And then the West, which is another interesting division going into the 2025 season, 3-1 are the San Francisco 49ers, who have the easiest schedule statistically in the NFL going into this new year. You have those pesky LA Rams that I talked about at the beginning of this video at 3-1, neck and neck. And then 2-2, 2-2 is the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of people in my record predictions for the 2025-26 seasons said that they are firm believers in the Arizona Cardinals as a playoff team. So that's pretty interesting. And if you haven't seen that video, please check it out. It is the video right underneath this one. So we are going to come back around after week number 8. I'll probably check in at week 9, and we'll see what we're doing halfway through the season. All right, we are in week 9 here, and we have a very interesting developments as this season have gone on. Let's take a look at the playoff picture so far. Now it's starting to take shape. I didn't talk about it after the quarter season because it's only 4 games, but now that we're about 8 some teams 9, some teams 7 games through the season. We're definitely taking shape here. You have the Buffalo Bills at 6-1 in first place, or in number one seed rather. Then the matchups are interesting. You have the Jaguars and the Broncos at the 4 and 5 seed. The Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals at the 3 and 6, and then at the 2 and 7, you have the LA Chargers and the Miami Dolphins. On the other side, you have the undefeated 7-0 Green Bay Packers taking the number one seed right now. The 5-3 Eagles at the number 2 seed against the 4-3 number 7 seed Chicago Bears. Now, I don't know if you guys have already seen, but as of right now, all four teams from the NFC North are in the playoffs, and that's just unbelievable and something that I think there's a couple divisions actually in football this year that we might see something like that. It being the NFC North and the AFC West could possibly be like that as well. Super interesting to me. Then at the 3 and 6, you have the San Francisco 49ers and the Detroit Lions. And then at the 4 or 5, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Minnesota Vikings. Let's take a look at the standings here. Pretty status quo, I would say. Nothing too crazy. A couple crazy scenarios here. We'll get to that in a minute. But you have, I said, the Buffalo Bills. Then the Miami Dolphins are in a playoff spot at 5-3. The Jets have sort of kind of come crashing back down to earth at 4-4. 3 and 5 are the New England Patriots. In the AFC North, the 5-2 Ravens lead the way. Then you have the 5-3 Bengals. The 3-5 Cleveland Browns, who started off 0-4 and have been 3-1 in their last 4 games. So that's quite interesting. And the 1-6 Pittsburgh Steelers, who somehow will probably turn around and win 9 or 10 games out of this. In the AFC South, you have the Jaguars still leading the way. You have the Indianapolis Colts sliding up the rankings here at 4-4. 3-4 are the Houston Texans, and 3-5 are the Tennessee Titans. And then the AFC West is quite interesting. You have the 6-2 LA Chargers leading the way and the number 2 seed. Then you have the Denver Broncos, who are the 5 seed in the wild card. Then the Kansas City Chiefs are 4-4 and currently out of the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes throughout the 3-quarter season check-in and then the full season. And then you have the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-5. On the NFC side, things are kind of crazy all over the place here. The Philadelphia Eagles are 1 game ahead of the 4-4 Washington Commanders in charge of the NFC East. Then you have the 3-5 Dallas Cowboys and the 2-6 New York Giants, who lost some pretty close games there in that second part of the season simulation. Then in the North, you have the 7-0 Packers, like I mentioned before, the 5-2 Minnesota Vikings, the 4-3 Detroit Lions, and the 4-3 Chicago Bears. What was the last time you ever saw a last place team in their division in the playoffs? Crazy stuff. 4-4 lead the way in the NFC South. That's pretty much, that makes sense. Then you have 3-4 the Atlanta Falcons, 2-6 the Carolina Panthers. A little disappointing. I wanted to see them simulate a little bit better up until this point. And then the 1-7 New Orleans Saints. And this division went from being the most tightly contested through the first quarter of the season to kind of separating itself into 2-2. You have the San Francisco 49ers at 5-3 in the lead. 4-3 are the LA Rams, and 2-5 and 2-5 are the Seattle Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. Very disappointing from the Seattle Seahawks up until this point. So we're going to check in again at the 3-quarter season mark. What a turn of events we've had so far throughout this season. We'll take a look at the playoff seeding as of right now. You have the Baltimore Ravens leading the way in the AFC with the number 1 seed. The Jacksonville Jaguars at the 2 seed at 8-3 against the 7-5 number 7 seeded Los Angeles Chargers. Then the Buffalo Bills at the 3 seed at 8-3 against my 7-4 New York Jets at the number 6 seed. And at the number 4 and 5, you have the combined 8-4 Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins. Wow, 3 teams from the AFC East up until this point are in the playoffs. And even the fact that the Jets through 11 games in this simulation are in a playoff spot is good enough for me. I could quit while I'm ahead. In the NFC side, you have the 9-2 Green Bay Packers, who were 9-0 and then came crashing back down to earth with a couple losses the last 2 weeks. In the number 1 seed here, then the 9-3 San Francisco 49ers against the 6-5 Chicago Bears. If you guys couldn't tell, the NFC North, all 4 teams are still in the playoffs up until this point. The 3-seeded Philadelphia Eagles against the number 6-seeded Detroit Lions at 6-5. A little bit of a struggle so far this season for the Detroit Lions. The 8-3 number 5 seed Minnesota Vikings, JJ McCarthy, I guess, has taken that job in stride against the NFC South leaders, Atlanta Falcons at 5-6. Yeah, we'll go through those standings in a second, but we're gonna go through the standings here: 8-3, 8-4, 7-4, and 5-7 for the AFC East. Three playoff teams, as I mentioned before. 9-2 leads the way for the Baltimore Ravens. 6-5 for the Cincinnati Bengals. 3-8 between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Massively disappointing season for the Steelers. Incredible season for the Jaguars so far at 8-3, 6-5 for the Indianapolis Colts, 5-6 for the Texans, and 4-7 for the Tennessee Titans. I do expect the Tennessee Titans around like that 6-7 win range with Cam Ward. I do think he is the truth. I think he's going to do very well for them in the future. You have the Denver Broncos leading the way in the AFC West. Bo Nix, my guy. Unsolicited Knicks picks. You got to love it. You have the 7-5 LA Chargers holding strong with a 2-game lead over the 5-6 Kansas City Chiefs. What has gone on in Kansas City? And then you have the 4-7 Las Vegas Raiders. Over on the NFC side, very hotly contested in a couple of these divisions here. 7-4 leads the way for the Philadelphia Eagles. 6-6 for the Washington Commanders that just haven't been able to figure it out. They win one, they lose one. They win one, they lose one. This simulation has been tough for them. 3-8 for the Dallas Cowboys. My goodness gracious. I'm assuming Dak Prescott got hurt again. And then 3-9 for the New York Giants, who have the toughest schedule in football. The NFC North, 9-2, like I said before, leads the way for the Green Bay Packers. 8-3 for the Minnesota Vikings. 6-5, 6-5 between the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. The NFC South is gross. You have the the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tied with the tiebreaker going to the Atlanta Falcons up until this point at 5-6. 4-8, somehow still in play for the division are the Carolina Panthers, and even the 2-9 New Orleans Saints are not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs yet. Okay. And then the NFC West, you have the 9-3 San Francisco 49ers, the 5-6 LA Rams, whose hopes of three-peating in this series are fading. 4-7 for the Arizona Cardinals, and I don't know what the heck is going on in the Pacific Northwest for the Seattle Seahawks at 2-9. So the next check-in we have, our playoff seedings will be confirmed, and we will move into the playoff aspect of this simulation. All right, so the last 4 to 5 games of this simulation were absolutely crazy. Let's take a look at the final playoff seedings here. You have the Baltimore Ravens at 12-5 as the number 1 seed in the AFC. The wild card weekend playoff schedule is going to be the number 2 12-5 Buffalo Bills taking on a division rival at the 9-8 New York Jets. My New York Jets have finally broken the worst streak of playoff drought in American sports up until this point right now. I think it was 2010, 2011 season was the last time we made the playoffs. So the longest drought in American sports up until this point right now. Oh boy, it's over. Only in a simulation. That's how you know it's a simulation when the New York Jets make the playoffs. But number 3 seed against the number 6 seed, that should be a barn burner of a match between the 11-6 Denver Broncos against the 11-6 Cincinnati Bengals, who had quite the resurgence the last quarter of the season. The 10-7 Jacksonville Jaguars take on the 12-5 Miami Dolphins, who had some season and just narrowly missed out on the AFC East title. Wow. Moving over to the NFC side, you have the 14-3 San Francisco 49ers. Now, you might say that's crazy, not realistic, but don't forget that the San Francisco 49ers are going to be healthy going into the season, and they do have the easiest schedule in football. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. 14-3 is kind of crazy, though. The number 2 former champion Philadelphia Eagles at 12-5 are going to be taking on the division rival Washington Commanders, who figured it out and went 4-1 in the last 5 games of the season. And they got the number 7 seed. The number 3 seed Green Bay Packers, who started out 9-0 and wound up 12-5, will take on those pesky Rams that I just talked about. They somehow snuck in, as I predicted at the beginning of the video, they somehow snuck in to the playoffs at 10-7. So I can't wait to see them go on this epic run to the Super Bowl again. And then a playoff matchup that we've seen quite a bit in this simulation so far, the 9-8 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What a disaster of a division that turned out to be against the number 5 seeded Minnesota Vikings at 11-6. So let's take a look at some of these final standings here. Some pretty unbelievable ones, to be honest with you here. AFC East was crazy. Three playoff teams, 12 and 5, split between the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins. The 9 and 8 New York Jets just squeak in at the 7 seed. And then you have the 7 and 10 New England Patriots, who are definitely going to be on the up and up. In the AFC North, pretty shocking, at least at the bottom here. You have the 12 and 5 Baltimore Ravens, who got the number one overall seed. The 11 and 6 Cincinnati Bengals, who are the sixth seed in the playoffs. 5 and 12 are the Cleveland Browns. It's pretty much expected. And then 4 and 13 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It all comes crashing down. The AFC South wound up being a little bit closer at the top than expected. 10 and 7 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. 9 and 8, who I guess just narrowly missed out on the playoffs, are the Indianapolis Colts. 6 and 11, an incredibly disappointing third season for CJ Stroud here. And then 6 and 11 for the Tennessee Titans, who hopefully are looking up. AFC West is crazy. 11 and 6 for the Denver Broncos, or who somehow are the only team that made the playoffs from the AFC West. The 9 and 8 Chargers, who were in the playoffs all throughout the season, in the last week, fumbled the bag and missed out at 9 and 8. The 8 and 9 Kansas City Chiefs, I'm assuming in the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era, will not be making the playoffs. 7 and 10 are the Las Vegas Raiders. Over on the NFC side, some really surprising couple weeks at the end here. 12 and 5 for the Philadelphia Eagles. They are firmly cemented in the number 2 seed. 10 and 7 for the Washington Commanders. What a final quarter of the season they had. 6 and 11 for the Dallas Cowboys. Woof. 4 and 13 for the New York Giants. The NFC North winds up being one of the craziest divisions you'll ever see. The Green Bay Packers wound up being 12 and 5. The Minnesota Vikings 11 and 6. The Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears wind up 9 and 8 and both miss out on the playoffs despite being in the playoff seeding the entire season. And then the NFC South just turned into an absolute crap division when it's all said and done. 9 and 8 leads the way for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the other three teams split 6 and 11. So that means that the Atlanta Falcons, after being in the lead, went 1 and 5 over the last 6 games of the season to wind up 6 and 11. To be 6 and 11, unbelievable. So the New Orleans Saints somehow wind up in second place in the NFC South and probably ruin their chances at a top quarterback. Really disappointing from the Atlanta Falcons and the Carolina Panthers there. And then the West is just extremely disappointing for a couple teams here. 14 and 3, the best record in football for the San Francisco 49ers. 10 and 7 for those pesky LA Rams. 6 and 11 for the Arizona Cardinals. I guess we're going to have to start having some conversations about Kyler Murray here. And then 4 and 13. I'm going to assume like Sam Darnold got injured in like week 1, and Jackson Smith and the Jigba got hurt as well. And like every player this season just fell apart for the Seattle Seahawks. That is unbelievable, to be quite honest with you. So we are going to simulate wild card weekend here, and we're going to see what our divisional matchups will look like. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we have it. Wild card weekend is over with. The Buffalo Bills beat my New York Jets. That's okay. Didn't expect them to make the playoffs anyway. They advance to the divisional round. The Cincinnati Bengals go into Denver and upset. I don't know how much of an upset that truly would be. They upset the Denver Broncos away from home and move on. And the Jacksonville Jaguars at 10 and 7 at home beat the 12 and 5 Miami Dolphins to move on to the Final Four of the AFC. On the NFC side, the Philadelphia Eagles beat their division rival, the Washington Commanders. Those pesky LA Rams, man, here we go. They go into Lambeau Field and beat the Green Bay Packers, and then the Minnesota Vikings beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So our divisional playoffs are set. Let's see what the simulation comes up with here. All right, here we go. The divisional round looks like this. The Cincinnati Bengals march into Baltimore and upset the Baltimore Ravens in advance to the AFC Championship game, and the Buffalo Bills handle the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. And then on the NFC side, you have the San Francisco 49ers ending the legendary streak of the LA Rams, going for that three-peat in this simulation. It will not happen this year. And then how about Minnesota Vikings? And led by rookie quarterback, I guess you can still call him a rookie, he never played a snap, J.J. McCarthy, going for into his first NFC Championship game in his first year. That team is absolutely loaded, especially on offense. This wouldn't surprise me at all. So we are set for the Final Four. The conference championship games are the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Buffalo Bills and the Minnesota Vikings against the San Francisco 49ers. Can any of these teams really, there's no expectations, I guess you would say, on top of these other teams for the Minnesota Vikings, but can any of these other three teams finally win that big one here that we've been desperately looking for from either Joe Burrow, from Josh Allen, or from the San Francisco 49ers, who have been there how many times in the last X amount of years. So let's see what happens. Oh boy, here we go. The Super Bowl 60 matchup is going to be it's going to be history. It's going to crown a new champion for the first time. The Buffalo Bills have never won a Super Bowl. The Minnesota Vikings have never won a Super Bowl. So we are going to see a new Super Bowl winner here. The Buffalo Bills from the AFC and the JJ McCarthy led Minnesota Vikings are going to face off in the Super Bowl. This has to be what? Who was the last rookie quarterback to make the Super Bowl? And I guess it would be with an asterisk because JJ McCarthy was drafted in 2024, not 25. But it has to be Ben, right? Or Ben lost in the AFC Championship. I don't know. It had to be Ben was close if it wasn't him. But uh, yeah, that's let's see what happens here. I don't know which way I want to go because I want to see both of these teams win the Super Bowl for the most part. I'd rather see the Vikings over the Bills, but I am a big fan of Josh Allen. I would love to see him win the big one at some point. So let's see what happens. Oh, and there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The Buffalo Bills have won Super Bowl 60 in the simulation. Congratulations to them. They knock off the two-time repeat champions, LA Rams. They knocked them off the throne. They beat the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl here, and they win their first Super Bowl to Josh Allen. Congratulations to them. Let's see what happens in the actual season here. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There is my simulation of the 2025-26 NFL season. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Please leave a like. Please subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed, and hope I see you in the next one.